Okay, thank you. I will turn the time now over to Nancy.
I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Renette Apodaca. Renette has earned a bachelor's of accountancy and master of public administration from New Mexico State University. She is a certified public procurement officer and State of New Mexico certified chief procurement officer. Currently serving as the executive director of procurement, business systems and accounts payable for Albuquerque Public Schools. Renette oversees the operations of the department for the 30th largest school district in the nation. Renette's experience in procurement includes director of purchasing, risk management and materials management at New Mexico State University, purchasing manager at Donna Ana County, and purchasing supervisor for a federal NASA contractor. She teaches public sector related courses for New Mexico Edge that includes public sector procurement, contract administration, public sector budgeting, public finance, and procurement administration. She has presented professional programs at numerous procurement conferences, such as NIGP, the National Association of Educational Procurement, Kansas City Regional Procurement Exposition, San Antonio Public Procurement Association, and Rocky Mountain General Purchasing Association. She has served as president of New Mexico Public Procurement Association for the past 4 years. We're excited to have her here. Please welcome Renette.
Good morning. We're just going to get the PowerPoint going real quick. So now I'll get to add you guys to the list, right? At places that I've presented. And it makes me really happy to be here around among procurement people because we all get it, right? We all know what it's about. We all kind of talk the same language. So, I'm very happy to be here and hope to visit with you after the presentation. So let's see if we can get this going. Anybody from IT in the room? Okay, so we got it going. So I actually put this presentation when I was looking at my notes. I actually put this together in 2010. So it was like 8 years ago that I kind of started looking into negotiation and putting some material together to train people in negotiation. So I did update, I have some notes because I did update some important information. So, no. Sorry. Okay. So today we're gonna talk about some background. We're gonna look at some negotiation skills, some strategies and techniques. And usually when I teach this class, I'm a little bit longer, so we actually do some practice. Like I'll get some volunteers and we actually try to do negotiation, but I don't think we'll have enough time. So, but that's, I know you're sad not to be able to volunteer, but, and then we'll just kind of close with some recommendations. So when I started this, there was actually commercials on the Negotiator. Do you guys remember that? Do you remember William Shatner, or what was it? Priceline? And he was saying that he was slashing and cutting prices, right? But I don't think those come out anymore. So I don't think he's doing that for us anymore. But a lot of times people think about negotiation and they think of the other guy. Who's that other guy on the other slide? A salesman, right? Like a car salesman. Did you know that 70% of people expect to go and negotiate a car deal when they go to buy one? Do you think that's true? When you go and buy a car, do you expect to be negotiating? Yeah? Or do you pay the sticker price? How many pay the sticker price? Anybody? No, usually you don't, right? It's part of that culture, and it's pretty accepted, right? One thing that you got to remember with negotiation is it should not be haggling. A lot of time negotiation has like a negative connotation because people think, oh man, I got to go fight, I'm going to have to go fight with this person. But negotiation shouldn't be that. And one thing that I'll kind of mention in a little bit is negotiation should be to strengthen a relationship, not hurt one, right? So how many of you feel like you negotiate right now? Anybody? You know, there's a book that I brought with me, and it's on negotiation. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's called Getting to Yes. Have any of you ever seen this book? Getting to Yes? It starts out and it tells you you are a negotiator. You're already doing this. So think about it in your private life. Do you negotiate with your spouse? Maybe somebody says, well, I'll do the dishes if you cook. Or if I do the laundry, you'll fold it. How many of you negotiate with your spouse? Yeah, right? How about your kids? Do you negotiate with your kids? You go to bed early or get good grades or whatever, I'll get you this, I'll let you go here. How many of you negotiate with your kids? Yes. How about your boss? You ever negotiate with your boss? I'll stay a little bit later if I can go home early on Friday, right? So we're all kind of negotiating. I have 3 daughters, and I'll tell you some stories about them. And my youngest is actually the best negotiator. And I don't know if it's because she's the baby of the family, but when she went off to college, she had a dog. She had a little poodle. And when she went off to college, she couldn't take it to the dorm, right? So guess who she negotiated to take care of it? Mom, right? Well, Mom, I know it's my dog, but they won't let me have it in the dorm, so I'm going to leave it with you. So I inherited a dog. Well, what did the dog need? Dog food, right? Shots. Who do you think paid for that? You. Mom, right? And I'm like, this is her dog. So then I get the opportunity to go and do some classes and teach. So I told her, Summer, during the summer. I said, Summer, you know what? You gotta take care of your dog. I'm gonna be out of town. I gotta go teach. I'll be back on the state. I gotta take care of the dog. So then, you know, she'll tell me, okay, Mom. And then after a while, she'll tell me, oh, you know what, Mom? You have to give me $20 because I'm going to need some money for gas. And I'm like, oh, okay, $20, that's fair. But then I think about it, that's her dog. She's a good negotiator, right? So we're all negotiating. So it's really important to all of us. It's really important to procurement because of the evolution of procurement. How many have been in procurement more than 10 years? Has it changed? Yes? How about 15 years, 20 years? It has definitely changed because it used to be primarily a clerical function. You know, everything has a history, right? And procurement has a history. If you go back to this monkey over here, you see that first one? Back then, procurement was more like materials management. So people would just order materials. If you think about the Industrial Revolution, when there was a lot of manufacturing plants, well, for the plants, they were producing a lot of goods, right, at that time. So they were purchasing a lot of material. So that's where procurement, our ancestors, started out as clerks, right? Paper pushers. They would get an order, pay, check it, order it, move on. And as procurement started evolving, our tools started evolving. So all of a sudden in procurement, all of a sudden there was a procurement code. You know, Polly was talking about the Utah procurement code. When was that actually put into law in Utah? Does anybody know? Any idea? Anybody? No? No? Because
It was last month, it was 83, 84, 85.
1983, 84, 85? That's not that long ago, right? Well, in New Mexico, it was in 1978. That's when they enacted the procurement code. And the procurement code really, really favored bidding. That's the way it's written. It really favors bidding. That you put out a bid and you get bids and you evaluate it, and who do you award to? Low bid, right? So that's where it started evolving. And then in the 1980s, you started looking at added value. So you started looking at RFPs. All of a sudden, there was this new procurement tool, an RFP. How many of you do RFPs? How many of you negotiate RFPs? Or how many of you just take what they give and, yeah, we did it. Check the box and we'll keep going, right? And now, as procurement evolves more, it's more strategic. So now we are seen as a strategic partner. So it's evolved. We're not just a clerk. We're not just getting the paper, pushing it on. We're not just going to low bid. We are doing RFP, and now we're being strategic, right? So part of being strategic is we have had to gather skills along the way. Because to move from one to another, our knowledge has grown, right? We have to know more. And part of it is negotiation. You know, in the research that I was doing, it was talking about how negotiation is in some professional academic plans. So you can think about an attorney. Do you think an attorney needs to learn that? Negotiation? Yeah, because they're negotiating cases and plea bargains and all this stuff, so they need to know how to do that. In Harvard, at their business school, they have a class, a whole semester on negotiation for people in their business school, because they're negotiating contracts, correct? Big old contracts for business. You think about our president right now, he's negotiating, right? He's negotiating treaties. So it's a very good skill to have, to be able to negotiate. When I was doing some research for this, I actually found this article in the journal, and it was titled Negotiation Skills for Librarians. I know, and I thought, librarians? What's that all about? So I pulled it up and started to read it. And librarians have to buy licenses for journals, right? Everything's like electronic now. So it's talking about how a librarian could negotiate a contract to get more licenses there, actually for their library. But it was interesting because at the beginning, he talked about why it was important to negotiate, and then it said on there, if you're not clear on this, contact your procurement department. And I was like, wow. So they recognize, hey, there's some professionals in the procurement department. So if you're not sure how to do this, contact procurement. Has anybody had a librarian contact them? Just curious. Yeah. See, there is the article. Right? So, it is is really essential for procurement departments to be able to do that. We need to be able to maintain our relevance. So I always tell my staff that. I always tell them, what kind of added value are we going to add to the procurement that we do? Because if we're not adding some kind of value to it, then they try to go around us, right? How many times do you have people go around you? Buy things when they shouldn't be buying them? I know we do, unfortunately. But we want to show them that, that the skills we have will help them. Because if we can help them negotiate a contract, maybe they'll have a little bit more, right? They'll have a little bit more to spend. They'll have a little bit better quality. You know, for us in Albuquerque Public Schools, it's always about getting every dollar in the classroom. So that's basically what we tell people. Let us help you so we can get you a better, hopefully, price or a better product, and then you can have more dollars for the classroom. So that's how we try to show that, that we're essential. Negotiating is key to keeping your departments relevant, and negotiating is a top reason to turn to us. Right? Okay. Yeah. So this gentleman, I found this in an article, and he said, there's plenty of companies out there just looking their chops to get their teeth into outsourcing the purchasing department. What do you think of that statement? Do we already have some outsourcing of procurement? Can you guys think of something? How many of you use co-ops? Is there co-ops out there that look like an outsourcing of procurement? Is there co-ops out there for profit? How about U.S. communities? I don't know, do you guys use them? And if there's one, what's that? NJPA, National Joint Powers Authority. What else? Have you guys? So there are co-ops out there that are for profit that are basically an outsourcing of procurement. Is there any public co-ops? There's one in Texas. It's called Choice Partners. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And it's actually a county, but they developed their own co-op. They do all kinds of procurements. You can use their contracts, but of course they charge a fee, right? Because nobody does anything for free, right? But what are they? They're an outsourcing of procurement. Because they're saying, hey, you don't need such a big procurement office. We can take care of your janitorial, your office, all of those day-to-day, so you guys concentrate on really the specialized, and it's an outsourcing of procurement. We would never want that, right? No, because we want to make sure that our profession is relevant. You know, in some of the research I did, I was surprised to see where there was actually a county that outsourced their HR department. They outsourced their whole HR department. They had a director that was part of the county, and they had a couple of staff people, but everything else, like their benefits, their leave, all of that, they had outsourced it all. People are always trying to find different ways, right? Different business models. We do not want purchasing to be one of those. And one of the ways is to show the skills that we have, right? Negotiation being one of them. So the good news is that skillful negotiation is something that can be learned. Like I said, you're probably already doing it, but you just haven't applied it to your profession. You can't be frightened of it. You can't look at it negatively, because that's how people kind of look at it. And one of the first things you want to do is educate yourself. And that's what you're doing right now. You know, you're here, listening to a presentation on negotiation, and then you can probably start thinking about some ways that you can start implementing it. You want to feel comfortable with it. I feel comfortable in doing negotiation because I've been doing it for a long time, and it's something that I teach my staff, so I participate in a lot of negotiations with them. One of the things that I do, like on a personal level, is like my daughters used to make fun of me because anytime we go shopping, I always ask them, "Do you guys have a coupon? Do you guys have a coupon today? Is there anything I can use?" You know, and they'd be like, "Mom, how embarrassing! I can't believe you asked the clerks that." But now when I go with them, they'll ask me, "Can we tell them if they have a coupon?" Because they want to save money, right? And I'll just ask them, "Hey, you don't have a coupon today by any chance?" And, you know, and they're really good. "Oh yeah, I do. I have this 30% off." You want to promote confidence. Whenever you start getting comfortable with negotiating, you get more confident. I actually had a buyer when I worked at New Mexico State University. He was the best negotiator I've ever seen. That guy negotiated everything. He helped me negotiate a car. He had that XM radio, helped me negotiate that contract. He would go on cruises. Him and his wife loved to go on cruises, and he would always negotiate a nicer cabin with a balcony. I mean, he was just so good at it. And he started bringing that confidence to our contracts. And one year he came in my office and he said, "Hey," he goes, "you know what my goal is for this year?" And I said, "What's your goal, John?" And he said, "I'm going to negotiate my salary here at New Mexico State. That's how much I'm going to save the university this year." And he kept a spreadsheet, and every time he would negotiate a better price, he would put it on there. That cost savings, that cost avoidance. So and he wanted to negotiate his whole salary. And he did it because he was so good at it. But he felt comfortable with it. The best negotiators are always patient, and we always do it with integrity, always. Like I said, a lot of time negotiation has a negative connotation, and you don't want it to look like we're playing games, like you're doing tricks, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about that in a little bit, but you don't want it to look like that. But a lot of the vendors, they know procurement sometimes better than us. And they know that there's a thing called the best and final offer. How many of you asked for that? Best and final offer. They know that. So sometimes their pricing is a little bit elevated because they said, "Oh, they'll probably ask me for best and final, and I have room to go down." But guess what happens? We don't ask. So it's still higher. And can you imagine how much we have left at the table? We're not sure. So the best negotiators are patient. So what can be negotiated? What can? Any ideas? Terms and conditions. Okay, what else? What can be negotiated? What's the biggest thing? Price, right? What else? Shipping. Yeah, you can try to get free shipping or reduce shipping. What else? Warranties. Yep, you might say, "You know what? I know you offer 90-day warranty, but we want a whole year or more." We negotiated our warranties with our construction. What is usually construction? What's usually the warranty on that? Anybody? Is it a year? It's usually a year, right? We negotiated ours for 2 years. What else? So you have warranties, you have shipping, you have price, you have terms and conditions. What else can you negotiate? Have you ever heard that term where people say everything's negotiable? Except what? Oh, taxes. What else? How about training? Maybe training. Maybe if you're buying like a new software, you tell them, "Okay, This is the amount to implement, but we want you to throw in some free training for our people. What else? Some kind of ancillary services, right? Like, what else can you guys throw in? Maybe some help desk, maybe so many hours of help desk, because we know this is a new product. We know we're not going to know how to use it, but can you throw in something to help us? What else? What else could you negotiate? Price. Oh, yeah, discount on invoices. If you pay early, that you get a discount. We used to do a lot of that, right? Back in the day, what was it? Net 33% or something like that. Yeah, if they get their money quicker, then can they lower the pricing for us? What else? What else would you want to negotiate? Maybe a term. Like us, we start our fiscal year, probably all of you, July 1st, right? So let's say that you're buying something in April. Maybe you say, hey, can you throw in April, May, and June in and start our contract in July so we can start on the fiscal year? Sometimes your term. You just have to get with your users and understand what they need so you can try to help them maximize what their expectation is. Okay? And that's kind of, because if you don't understand what you're buying and what they need, then it's hard for you to negotiate, right? Okay? So what would not be, what's non-negotiable? What do you guys think is non-negotiable? It's off the table, always. Any ideas? No? What do you think that a vendor would never negotiate? Anything that's going to take ownership away from them. Any type of proprietary information. Like we had this one instance where we had bought this software, and it mostly standard software, where they say, no, we own the code, right? We own the code. We're not going to give you guys any type of open source where you guys can see the code. It's proprietary. They're never going to negotiate that. Something that's really big now is anything to do with security. Anything to do with security is usually off the table. We've had so many like data breaches and that kind that, unfortunately the vendors will not negotiate anything. It is what it is, and that's what we get. What else? So anything that takes away ownership, anything related to safety. Can you guys think of anything else that would be off the table? There's not much. That just shows you there really isn't very much. Everything else you should be able to negotiate. Okay? This is a dear friend of mine, and I should have put doctor in front of it because she just got her doctorate degree. She actually used to work in Detroit for one of the big motor companies, and she says, I don't accept the first offer from a vendor. I ask them to go back and do better. And that's basically her philosophy. She did come from the motor industry, and it was always the bottom line, right? They always look at the bottom line. So she had to make sure that she kept her part of that she was in charge of going. So she was always looking at price. So she brought that philosophy to UTEP, to the University of Texas, and she says, I don't accept it. I always go back and say, hey, what can you do for us? We're a big partner. We spend a lot of money with you. What can you guys do for us to keep us as a customer? And if you talk to any of her staff, they have the same philosophy. They always look to see what they can do in the best interest of the university. Okay? So what are some of the skills you have to have? Well, negotiation is basically communication, right? It's a back and forth. It's a back and forth. And a lot of times you're communicating with people you don't even know. You might be negotiating with people you don't even know. So, and a lot of times there's like distrust, right? Sometimes there's like distrust, sometimes you don't know them, you don't really know how to communicate with them. So you have to start that line of communication. And another thing that makes negotiation fail is that people don't listen, right? I always say people don't read because we send out all kinds of information to our departments and they never read them. Well, they not only do they not read, a lot of times people don't listen. So whenever you're participating in an actual negotiation, you have to be able to listen. And one of the articles that I read was saying that unfortunately, sometimes when the other person is talking, in your head, you're already trying to think of a rebuttal, right? So you're listening to it, at the same time you're thinking, oh, I'm going to tell this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, but you're not really listening to that person. So you have to actively listen, and then a lot of times you have to restate. So maybe they give you an offer, and then you kind of restate it back to them. And you say, okay, well, what I'm hearing is, you guys can go down 10% plus throw-in shipping. Or you can do this, or you can give us free training, and you're kind of restating. So you got to make sure that you do that. So I'm going to give you a little story about my father-in-law. He used to love to negotiate when he would go and purchase a car. So if you go back like maybe 10, 12 years ago, before there was so much on the internet, he would do so much research to go and buy his car, right? He would get all these newspapers, and he would look up all these ads, and he would mark them. He would get the blue book. Do you guys remember? Do they still have that? The blue book? Yeah. He would get that Kelly blue book, and he would look up cars for his trade-in. He would go drive by lots, and he would do all of this research. And then the day that he finally was going to go and buy his car, he would take out his nice suit, and he would get all ready, and he would have all his numbers, and he would go, and he would negotiate his car. And when he would come back, he would be so happy because he would be within his numbers. But he did a lot of preparation. I was telling you about my buyer, John. He kind of did the same thing, but more with technological stuff. He would look at dealers in Albuquerque and Phoenix and Denver, and he would do all of this. And then he would go negotiate his car, and he went a step further. When he was all done, he would talk to the salesman, and he would ask them, can you tell me, what did I do right? What did I do right? What could I have done better to get a better price? And the salesman would be open with him. And and they would tell me, you were really patient. You took your time, you were really patient. And then another one would tell me, you never got upset. As many times that we had to tell you, I gotta go check with my manager and go back and forth, you never got upset. So he was able to use that in his favor. So whenever we want to negotiate something, we need to do our research. So we just actually did a contract for refuse or trash service, okay? So what we did to do our research was, of course, we looked at our past bills, right? To see what have we been paying. We knew the company that we were doing business with was doing business with our community college. So we asked them, hey, can we have a copy of your contract? We want to see kind of what they're charging you. And then one of their, probably the only competitor was our city. So we went to look at our city and say, hey, what do you guys charge for trash pickup for a dumpster this size 3 times a week or whatever? So we had to do our research. The second thing you'll see on there is you need to look at part numbers of what other people are paying. So that way you know what the market is, right? You get a good idea. There's that part numbers of what other people are paying. So that way you know what the market is, right? You get a good idea. There's another software contract that I'm negotiating right now with a company, and they're actually doing the same thing for Atlanta Public Schools. So guess who I called? Atlanta Public Schools. And I asked them, can you send me a copy of the contract? I want to see, what are you guys paying? So you have to do your research. You have to do like my father-in-law. You have to get those newspapers and those blue books and drive around. And so that way you have a good idea of what you're negotiating. Who do you think, you also have to know who their main source of competition is. Because maybe you need to know what the competition, like I told you, is paying. Like we did with the city. You know, so, well, what are we paying them? So that way you have a good idea of what a fair price is. You know, I had a contractor one time, he came to talk to me, and he said, you know what, Renette? He goes, I just want to earn an honest dollar. That's what he told me. And I told him, and I want to pay you an honest dollar. I mean, we need them, right? We need these companies, we need these services. So we don't want them to go out of business. We don't want to gouge them. We just want to pay an honest dollar. And like he told me, I just want to make an honest dollar. A lot of times on your research, who do you think can give you a lot of information about the company? Who would you think? If you're going to deal with a company, who do you think who can give you a lot of information on them? Who do you guys think? They're salesmen. Their salesmen will give you so much information because they're selling their company, right? And they're going to say, hey, you should do business with us because you, just down the road, this entity is using us, this entity in Arizona, this one. They'll tell you. So that way you can give them a call and say, hey, I hear you're doing this with X, Y, Z. How'd it go? So a lot of times their own salesperson will help you. And I was doing a negotiation for some professional development, for some training, and I was talking to the person in this company, and I asked him, hey, do you happen to have any contracts with any cooperatives or anything like that? And she tells me, no, but we just won an RFP with Chicago Public Schools. And I'm like, oh, you did? And she goes, yeah. And I said, well, let me talk to Chicago and see if maybe we can use their contract. And right away she stopped me. She said, no. She goes, I won't give you those prices. And I said, why? And she said, you know what? They are such good negotiators that they got me really, really down to a price that I can't give it to anybody else. So I called Chicago Public Schools and I said, how did you guys negotiate that? We're still working on that. But, you know, she told me that. She said, they're such good negotiators that I can't pass that price on. I need to give it to them. So they're doing good over there. So whenever you're going to set up a negotiation, like I did with my software, I had to identify sources within my entity to help me. Because I didn't know anything about trash. I didn't pick it up. I don't know the size. I don't know how often. I didn't know any of that. I needed to get somebody in there to help me. When I did the one for the software, I needed to know how many users, how are we using it, how long do you think we're going to use it. So you have to find somebody in your entity to help you negotiate those contracts. You also have to find out operational detail. Like, we have this one software that one of our schools purchased, and lo and behold, when we went to put it on our platform, it didn't work. It didn't work because our internet speed was not fast enough for some of the flash or whatever they call it. So operational, we didn't have the operational detail. So you have to know, is there something operational that you need to know? Because if not, it might not work. And this is really important. You need to know the future direction of where you're going. So if you're negotiating something that could be obsolete, like in 2 years, you need to know that. Because how long should your contract be? Probably 2 years, right? We did, my poor boss, she negotiated this contract for some modules to some of our software that now we're finding out that the vendor isn't going to support after 3 years. But we signed a 5-year contract. So we're going to have it for 3 years, but after 2 years, they said they're not supporting it, so we're going to be on our own. So how long should that contract have been? 3 years probably. So you have to find somebody that can help you with the future direction so you can know what makes sense. Okay? Has anybody ever heard of a BATNA? B-A-T-N-A. Has anybody heard of that? No? What's a BAFO? What's B-A-F-O? In procurement. Best and final that. A BATNA is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So basically, it's your bottom line. At one point, when you're negotiating, is it not worth it? Because if you can't get it at this bottom line, anything else would probably not work. And a lot of times, that's hard to do. And a lot of times, people don't do it. But you have to know what is your best alternative if you can't negotiate this contract. What are you going to do? What's the alternative? Are you going to go to the next offer? Are you just going to stay with what you have? Are you going to redo a whole solicitation? You have to know that. Because at that point, you'll be able to know what should we do next. So whenever you're going to get together to do some kind of negotiation, you have to have kind of your strategies. And they always happen before you get to the table. So just like I told you, my father-in-law, that he went and gathered all this information and all these newspapers and everything, that's what we need to do. Whenever we're going to negotiate a contract, you have to say, well, what must we have is the bare minimum, and these are the stuff we would love to have. And then you have to identify deal breakers. So when you're negotiating, it gets to this point where you say, no, if it gets to that, we're walking away, we'll go to the next one. You have to identify that. And then you have to identify negotiators within your organization. When we did our risk management, what we did is we actually outsourced part of our risk management, our workers' comp claims. So when we negotiated that contract, of course, we had to have somebody from risk management. We had our attorney. We had someone from finance that could help with the numbers. And then the purchasing person was there. So that was our team. And that's who we identified that would help with it. We had our attorney. We had someone from finance that could help with the numbers. And then the purchasing person was there. So that was our team. And that's who we identified that would help with it, negotiate the contract. Something that's really important is to identify who actually has authority on the vendor side to negotiate. Because sometimes you'll be negotiating with someone and then they'll say, oh, you know what, I don't have that authority. I got to go back and ask somebody else. Well, you don't want to do that. You want to negotiate with who really can negotiate with you. And that's when you kind of want to make sure and plan the deal. So the negotiation, just like there's different stages in what we do in bids and RFPs. So the first stage is the private preparation. And we talked about that. That's where you're, gathering information, looking at numbers, talking to people, getting your team together, putting your team together and coming up with a strategy. Who's going to do what? So that's private preparation. Then joint exploration sometimes happens when you kind of give each other stuff. So you might say, hey, let them send us an offer. We'll kind of look at it. Maybe we send some stuff back to them. And that's where you're kind of understanding what the deal is. Most of the time, if it's in an RFP, you have their proposal, so you know what their offer is. What's called the bidding stage, we're used to bidding, but really what this is when the two parties come together and they actually do the negotiation, when they have the talks. At Albuquerque Public School, where I'm at, I think we have 4 labor unions. So we have a union for the teachers, which is very, very strong in New Mexico. We have food and commercial workers for our cafeteria workers. They have a union. They're pretty strong too. We actually have a police force at our school. So there's the police union. And then I can't remember the 4th. We have to have negotiations with them every year. We negotiate a contract. So they have a team that goes through this, that actually prepares, and then they actually come back together. And then finally is closing, and that's where you actually have a contract. What do you think is important in all of these stages? Make sure and document everything. Document. When I was at Doñana County, I had this assistant county manager, and right above her desk, like right above her head, like right here, she had this sign, and it said, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. And whenever she would have people in her office, and they would be discussing something, and they'd be like, well, I told him to do this, oh, but I told him, and they'd go back and forth. She would ask them, well, where is it written? Do you guys have emails? Do you have anything? Oh, no. So she would just point up to her sign. If it didn't happen, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So she really, really taught me to make sure and document everything. That's what you want to do when you're negotiating. You want to make sure and document so that way when you close the deal, it's all written down. So people don't say, oh, no, I didn't say that. That's not what I meant. You have it written. So there is a class that you can go to actually learn to be a really good negotiator. And I sent John by. And when he went to this class, it was interesting. He was the only person in government. Everyone else was from the private industry, from big corporations. He was the only person in government. And in this class, they teach negotiation strategies. So here's some strategies. And some of these you might have actually seen. Usually what you want is a win-win situation. So what do you think a win-win is? What do you think? Where both parties are happy, right? We're getting the service or the product that we wanted at the price we wanted with a good warranty, with free shipping, and the supplier is happy to supply it to us. It's a win-win. Everybody wins, right? And there's also a strategy or technique called take it or leave it. So sometimes, have you ever seen that where somebody will say, well, this is the last one I have at this price, either you take it or leave it. I have other people who want it. Have you guys ever seen that? We used to have that at the university, like close to the end of the year. where the departments would call me, oh, I have this salesman, and he said if I don't place this order today, if I don't get the PO today, they don't have it anymore, it's gone. And I said, no, it isn't. They're just telling you that because they want to try to finish off the year. But surprisingly, do you think they had more the next day? Yep. But it was a strategy. Either you take it or it's gone. Leave it. Another one is good cop, bad cop. So sometimes you'll see where salesmen kind of team up. And one of them is very aggressive, you know, like, you get the sign, you got to give me the PO. He's very aggressive. And then the other guy comes in and is a good cop and says, oh, don't worry, I'll take care of you. You know, he's mean. Don't worry about him. So they kind of work together to try to seal the deal. Have you guys ever seen that? Maybe? Splitting the difference. Splitting the difference. What do you think that's all about? So maybe they're asking for something for 100,000, but you only have 80,000. So you're trying to negotiate, and they say, well, let's split the difference. You think it should be at 80, I think it should be at 100, let's do it at 90. Because the difference is 20, and we'll just split the difference. I had to do that with Amazon, believe it or not, with Amazon. Because we were using Amazon and a lot of stuff was getting returned, and you know how it's a third party a lot of times? Well, we weren't getting the right credits on our account, so Amazon actually didn't closed our credit, and then they sent in to collections. And we were like, we don't owe that much. I don't think we owe that much. For 1 year, we were going back and forth, and finally we said, you know what, let's just split the difference. I don't think we owe that much, you say that we owe that much, let's just split it and call it even, and they accepted it. They said, okay. So that's splitting the difference. Nickel and dime. Have you guys ever had a vendor nickel and dime you to death? You know, when my daughter was getting married, we went to the venue, and they charge you for every little thing. They charge you for the room, they'll charge you for every chair, for the tablecloth, for this, for that. I was like, oh my God. My daughters told them, well, we want to bring our own champagne, it's special. And I'm like, okay. And then the lady said, well, if you bring your own champagne, we charge you to open it. And I was like, oh my God, you're nickel and diming me to death. How many times have you got a quote from a vendor instead of them just giving you the amount? They're going to nickel and dime you. Look at that. Pity me. So sometimes, you know, a salesman might, you know, want you to, like, feel sorry for them. You're like, oh man, I need a close this deal, you know, it's my last one before I do this or that. Just kind of making you feel sorry for them. So you can hurry up and put everything through. Pity me. Stonewalling. Stonewalling is when they put something in place to make the deal kind of drag, so that way you're in a hurry. So like for us, we have to get things approved by the board. How many of you have boards you have to go to get things approved, purchases? How far in advance do you have to submit that paperwork? Like 2 weeks? Like us, we have to submit our agenda items at least 2 weeks ahead, or if not, we have to wait another month, right? So sometimes salesmen might drag their feet because they said, hey, if you know, I don't be quicker to want to negotiate with me if they can get it on this agenda instead of having to wait. So a lot of times you'll just say, okay, that's fine, I just need it on the agenda because they stonewall. And then you have Good Samaritan. This is where they say that they're doing you a favor. They're like, oh, guess what? I found this great deal, and it's just for today, and I thought of you, and you guys should buy this. And they're saving you. They're being a good Samaritan. So you might see some of this. One that I've seen lately, we buy a lot of Apple products at Public School, a lot of Apple. And that's probably the most aggressive salesperson I've ever met. And lately, because our POs do take a while to go through the system, all of a sudden, she started making her quotes good for 2 days. She started saying, hey, we need that PO, we need that PO. And we tell her, well, it has to go through the approvals. As soon as we get the approvals, we'll get you the PO. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she thought, well, those quotes are only good for 2 days. If you don't get me the PO, we need to start all over again. Do you think those quotes are really good for 2 days? Probably not. So, unfortunately, I don't know what strategy she's using there, but, she wants to try to get her commission. She wants to get that order. So before where they were good for 60 days or whatever, all of a sudden they're good for 2 days now. So, one place that you can really see some of these strategies, how many of you watch Pawn Stars? That pawn place in Las Vegas. They are very good at those strategies. And if you watch some of those episodes, you can pick up on it. You can pick up where it's nickel and diming, and those are some of the ones that I had on there, but we probably have a little bit of time that we might be able to at least watch one, but you'll see some of those strategies. They're very good at it. So what do we do from here? I think we all agree that our profession has changed. We're not clerical. We want to add value. We want to be relevant. We want to be able to negotiate. And, there was one that I negotiated with that risk management. And I want to say that we saved almost like $82,000 from their initial amount. When we came back and told our CFO, they were ecstatic. Because if we would have negotiated and just said, okay, we'll take that, we would have left $82,000 on the table. So, I don't know. So what do we do now? What do you do? Number one is continue to educate yourself. Continue to learn about negotiation. Number two, give it a try. And you might tell yourself, well, we don't do those big contracts. We just do small things in our office. That's okay. That is okay. Because maybe you can negotiate shipping. Maybe you're getting some books in and you say, hey, can you do better on the shipping? You just save some money that goes back in the classroom. Or maybe you get an extended warranty. Maybe you say, hey, you know what? Those are usually 90 days. I talked to them. They're going to give us a year warranty. And that gives us time to actually try it out to make sure it works. That's okay. Maybe you do a purchase that's on no contract. It's just a small purchase. And you give them a call and say, hey, did you know we're a government entity? Is that the best price you can give us? And maybe they knock another 10% or 15% off. That's okay. How many of you use GSA contracts? You guys don't use them? We use them in New Mexico. And GSA contracts are not bid. They're negotiated. So they have a ceiling price. That's the most they can charge you, but they can charge you less. And we always try to negotiate less. So, I don't know what's going on. No? So if you get a chance, watch some of those Pawn Stars. Like I said, you'll pick up on some of those strategies because they're very good at them. So in closing, if we get to the last slide. Fine. To be a good negotiator, you have to work at it. It doesn't come easy for anybody unless you're John, my father. And number two, take a course. You know, if you get the opportunity, do that. Practice negotiations. You know, even if you practice among yourselves. Find out what strategies work, didn't work, what worked well. Talk to people who are successful at it. When, you know, I worked in New Mexico State and I was always pairing him up with some of the other buyers and say, hey, go watch him, listen to how he talks to the vendors. You know, sometimes we had a budget for a certain amount, and I would tell John, hey, here's this order, but they can't afford it. Can you do something? He'd go, do his magic, and he'd come back and say, here it is. I got it for them. He was really good at it. I can't remember the last one. Your confidence, comfort level, and expertise will increase, I promise. Because like I told you, when I first started all this, I didn't want to do it. But you know what? I started doing it, and now I do it all the time, you know? Like I said, somebody sends something in, and I just ask them, what can you do for us? What can you do better? Can you give us a little bit better price? Can you ship it for free? Can you throw in a warranty? Can we get some free training? What can you do? And people will come start coming to you. So, let's see if we can pull. You know what, if you go to, let me see real quick. If you go to, let me pick one, because you can probably see it in most of them. No, just go back one more. Go pick another one.
The world's largest investment bank purchased $300 million of gold for their own Lincoln. This is pretty amazing. So this is a rare find.
Well, that's if it's real. 400, I'm looking online, things like $1,000. Were you able to sell it to your computer?
A guy brought in an extremely rare 1861 half eagle. That is, it's one of the few minted in North Carolina. So I called in my coin guy Mike to take a closer look, just to make sure it's not a counterfeit.
What's up, Rick?
1861 Charlotte.
That's a rare one. 1861 Philadelphia. There was that 700,000 of those. We're talking $500-600. With a C, we're talking a whole lot more. 20 times as much.
That's good news.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So this is a rare find.
Well, that's if it's real. I'd like to take a look at the MA mark.
Absolutely.
Okay.
How's it look?
After looking at it, yes, I believe that it is a authentic Charlotte minted coin.
That's awesome. Awesome news.
So what's it worth? You can get about 15,000 for this coin.
All right, beat it, Mike.
Very nice to meet you.
No, hey, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good luck, guys.
What do you want to do? $7,500. No. 12. I think you'd do just fine. I still have to send this off. Things can pop up when I send it off. I end up assuming all the risk. Let's somewhat split the difference. About 95. I'll go 8 grand out of it. I'm good. 8 grand. All right. Good do business. Come on, man. All right, sir. You got it. All right. Thank you.
Okay, you didn't see on there,
I have a one for the business.
you know, he called somebody in, right? Because he didn't know that much about it, so he called somebody in to come and look at it. That's where I was telling you, you need to get your expert.
Whether or not a chunk mark is just part of the point's history, or if it's just.
If you notice, not on this, I didn't see it on this one, but most of the time, he had them get the price first, most of the time. And then he'll come in almost half. Did you notice that? I mean, the guy said, I don't remember 15, and then he came in at what? 7,500, and then what did he tell him? The guy said, let's split the difference, right? Okay, but, you want to go ahead? Yeah, I think there's So like I said, if you watch some of those, you'll see some of the stuff that we talked about.
That being said.
But most of the time, whenever somebody brings something in, he'll bring somebody in to look at it, evaluate it, and tell them, you know, what it's worth. And even though that guy said it was worth this amount, he ended up getting in like at this amount. So it's pretty interesting. So like I said, I encourage all of you, to do that, to make sure and get yourself comfortable and see what you can do. And then maybe you can be like John. Maybe you can start saving your entity, your whole salary. What do you think? Okay. So let's go ahead and take a break. All right. Thank you.
If you guys need the restrooms,